The presentation says good morning, but I believe it's almost afternoon. No? So, hello everybody. Thank you, Uwe Hartwig and your team for the invitation and the impressive organization. Congratulations also on your jubilee, is what I heard this morning. And thank you to all the contributors and debaters for the inspiring works. I'm here to present a very small and modest project, which is a house. A house is something we can all relate to. First of all, I would like to say that it's a big challenge for us to speak about our projects in terms of space. We are used to reflecting on more pragmatic and rational aspects like context, material, construction, function. Space for us is usually where we stop explaining architecture or where the architecture starts to explain itself. So I had to try hard to formulate how we address space in our practice, and I came up with these 4 themes or aspects. Space is what we lack, it is what we leave open, it is what we construct, it is what we contain. I will briefly illustrate these 4 takes on space as they might help me to talk about the house in Zoersel, and they might help you to understand how our practice works. Like always, I have too many slides to bring to you the atmosphere of our works and to show how a design is never singular, how a design process is not linear or one-directional. Space is what we lack. The first one is a widely spread and widely debated observation in Flanders. Space is what we lack. 30% of our territory is covered with buildings. Climate change is slowly confronting us with the consequences. We need more space for common values like water, robust nature and biodiversity, unintruded by men, space for energy and food production, but also space for encounter, public space. We need white space, we need safe space. So, as an attitude and starting from this lack of space, constraints or scarcity are basic conditions for a designer to work in. As a result, our take on architecture is very often about what we leave open. This house in the 1960s allotment with single-family homes on fenced plots, we observed that despite the perception of high-quality life with a large amount of private space per capita, the settlement model of the allotment provides no collective nor public space for kids to play. As a suggestion, we turned the front yard of the private house into a playing area and made it visible and directly accessible from the street. We like taking away fences. The house that you see on the left is a house that we built. We took away the fence between the house and the neighbors, softening the driveways, taking out all the mineral materials, making space for a tree, water, and space for the neighbors to meet. This co-housing project where we organized the housing units in one volume on one side of the plot, leaving open communal space for vegetable garden and playing area. What may seem like common practice in suburban development is actually not. For this project, we actually had to convince the city council to step away from low-density allotment housing with single-family homes and to create more housing on less space, enhancing affordability, energy performance, and leaving space for public, water-robust park. Space is what we construct. Construction is a big theme in our practice. If space is what we construct, therefore the character or the identity of the architectural space we create is defined by how we construct it. Construction methods and materials are often closely related to the eventual envelope of a building with their own logics. Construction implies a form of rational material use in which geometry and space become one and the same question. We have become intrigued by how the material informs us in terms of construction and what the outcome can be in terms of space. Space is what we contain. We have developed this approach on this singular houses as an iterative approach. It's like always formulating a different answer on the same question. We have developed compactness and geometry, the construction of the shell and the infill as a strategy to create small buildings within this context that we sometimes call non-text, because it's generic. But at the same time, it is always very specific, a micro context of views and orientation or ecosystems. The designs become iterations, slightly different answers to the same questions. We started constructing from our enthusiasm about this passive house building and zero energy building and circular construction. We started disconnecting the shell from the infill. We construct shells as small containers as an interface between context and the interior. The space that we mark on the outside, but also what we enclose on the inside. Buildings that may appear like ruins at a certain time during their construction. The expression of the interior space is informed by construction, by the program, by material, and by context. The architecture is making its own space, its own constraints and limits. It tries to take as little space in the landscape as possible, and it tries to organize this inhabitability within this shell. The shell is often bigger than the house. The house in Zoersel is there. The red arrow. Where is Wally? We tried to make these drawings of the site plans without the fences, trying to find if there is some kind of a landscape structure underneath it, and trying to understand where the water goes and where animals can cross, etc. Small animals can cross. This is the legal site plan with the contour, and what you can see is that you have the square there, it's 14 by 14 meter, and there's a T-shaped house in this contour. So you have the building plot, which is materialized, and then you have the T-shaped house inside this very compact space. These are the facades drawings. This is the approach from the street. Here you can see how actually the house is trying to be small in a way, if you compare it to the neighbors. I'm just walking around it now. This is the back, where the garden is, or where the building opens to the landscape, like this. So actually this house is a shell with a house in the shell. This shell is a very simple structure. It's actually a cornice, a concrete cornice on 16 columns. So this is the framework for the house. And this is the floor plan. And the floor plan is organized by these three spaces that we left open within the contour of the building plot, which is 14 by 14 meter. The operation of making these terraces, leaving out space within this space, it helps to orient the house towards the sun and to make sunscreens wherever necessary. So it's the idea of making the house react on the orientation towards the sun without noticing it from the urbanist point of view. So these, we have an east terrace, a west terrace, and a south terrace. The south terrace is facing the street as well, so it's more private. It's more encapsulated in the structure of the shell, like you can see here. So these are all the very small outdoor spaces integrated within the shell of the house. So you have the shell becomes the facade, or it becomes a garden wall, or it becomes an open structure. This is the ground floor plan at street level. What you see is a very simple structure where the rooms have the size of a logical span of a wooden beam. What you also see on these pictures is that the idea of the cornice, of the concrete cornice on the outside, is also taken over as like a horizon within the living area of the interior. Connection to the outside patio on the south side. So half of the living space is put on 2 levels in the split level, very simple split level system. So you have a higher living area and a lower living area. And it's a very open plan, so on eye level you can see through in all directions, which means that you can feel the sun coming in all day and you can have a different perspective or different gradients of privacy, which influences the way you move in the house. This is the higher seating area, looking down on the kitchen and looking down at the garden, where you see that actually the cornice is cutting off the rest of the landscape, which is behind it. Underneath the higher living area, there's space, like basement space, semi-basement space with 2 children's bedrooms. So the level difference is like 1.2 meter, allowing for this visual continuity of the space at eye level. It's a very simple concept, of course. And overlooking the landscape on the back. Here you can see in the section how it works. So actually the shape of the cornice here is explained by the canopy shape of the roof with the wooden beams. It's taking the water to the right ends. So there's this relationship between the silhouette of the concrete cornice with the interior cornice and the construction of the roof. And this is already the end of my presentation, so thank you.